Welcome to CityBiz. We are here. I'm Melinda, Arndt. This is Michael Halley, and we're going to be hearing a few highlights from last night, which is December 17th City Council meeting, and also taking a look ahead at some topics of current interest. Right, Michael?
Sure.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the agenda, and by the way, you can do that. You can go to the Fairfield City of website and look at the agendas and the minutes for past City Council meetings, if that's of interest. And you are watching this, so it probably is of interest. But I like to do that and see what is coming up on the agenda. And a couple of items that caught my interest. One is that the City Hall is going to get a few redos and become more accessible. And I believe that is the drawings and plans and stuff coming up next January for a public hearing and viewing?
That's correct. So the government process is always a little slow for the sake of transparency. So at one meeting, you'll set a public hearing for the next meeting. So our first meeting in January, we'll go over the plans and specifications for these upgrades. And the upgrades were required by the USDA because the city accepted USDA grants and loans. So as soon as we accepted those federal funds, they took a look at our city buildings and determined that City Hall was in need of some additional ADA compliant renovations. So fortunately, the grant itself will cover the cost of the renovations.
Great.
So there's no out-of-pocket expense for the city. And ADA accessibility is something that's important. We want anybody with any sort of disability, if they're wheelchair bound temporarily or permanently, to be able to come into City Hall comfortably. So at this point, the way that the doors open, the outside doors, are a bit too close to the guardrail, and it creates this kind of bottleneck. So part of the plans are to move the exterior doors in towards inside a bit.
Oh, interesting.
So that's one upgrade. There'll be a railing attached to the building in the front. That's another upgrade. There'll be ADA accessible drinking fountain added. There'll be a portion of the front desk on the south side will be lowered so that somebody sitting level can come and access that. And then the bathrooms are both getting upgraded. So currently they're not ADA accessible, neither the men's nor women's bathroom at City Hall. So those will get upgraded as well. So all in all, it's not a big project. Oh, the final one is there'll be a ramp installed in the council chambers for anybody who wants to speak at the podium or get up on the dais where the council sits. So I know Jason Strong with the Fairfield Media Center is working to figure out exactly how that'll all fit into the way we film council meetings. I think we'll make it work because I have all confidence in Jason's creativity on this one. But yeah, it's going to be a good upgrade. All the city buildings are ADA accessible except for, at this point, the old Roosevelt Center.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the old school building that's used now as a rec building. Doesn't have an elevator. It's all stairs. So that building at some point, probably in the next 10 years, will be too expensive to maintain than it's worth. It'll come down, and then the city will most likely put a one-story building in its place. Maybe a slightly bigger footprint, but it's really hard to heat and cool that building. It's got old thermostats, radiators.
Radiators, yeah.
And they're always leaking, there's always water leaks. It's just one of those things that, and it doesn't have the elevator, it's not ADA accessible. So City Hall, and then that will be the next one. And then I think all the buildings will be completely in compliance.
Wonderful.
Yep.
So there's that to look forward to. And then the other topic that caught my eye on the agenda was that January is National Radon Month, which means that our wonderful Dan Miller will have available at least 50 free radon kits, and otherwise they're pretty cost effective. If he runs out of the 50, you pay, I forget what it is, but I think it's not that much.
Less than 20, I think.
Yeah, and then what you can do is you set it up in your house for a week, it measures stuff, you mail it in, and if you can highlight, or I can highlight briefly, why don't you though?
Sure.
Why you don't want radon in your house.
Yep, so this is something the council acknowledges every January. So Dan Miller from the Jefferson County Environmental Office comes in and talks about it. So radon is a colorless, odorless gas. It's the natural radioactive decomposition of uranium in the soil.
Yeah.
And in Iowa, about half the houses or buildings tested have higher than recommended levels. So radon is the second highest cause of lung cancer,
Yeah.
and the highest for non-smokers.
Yep.
So if you have elevated radon levels in your home, it can be the equivalent of smoking 8 cigarettes a day if it's particularly high.
And you won't know it
And
if you
won't know
haven't
it. Yeah,
tested.
you can't smell or see it, so you have no way of knowing. So it's important to test. Dan says if you've tested before and found the radon levels were low, you don't need to test again unless you've done something that may have disturbed the foundation. Or if it's been an especially dry season. He says that the ground, this is an issue we have, the water lines cracking. When it's really dry, the earth settles and cracks open up.
Oh.
And then some of the gas can be released. So the Kiwanis Club donates to pay for 50 free radon test kits, and they're given to properties that either haven't tested before under the program or had high levels and are retesting. So there is radon mitigation. Essentially, it's providing an outlet for the air that's
Right, that's the next step. If you
Yep.
find you have some high levels, you got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I had a friend who was actually working in his basement, and then they tested and they found that a certain portion of the basement, actually where he was sitting, is
Oh my gosh.
high. So he doesn't work down there anymore, and they've added some mitigation. So it's something that's important to test for, especially if 50% or so of the properties here in Fairfield and in the state come up with higher than recommended levels. That's a pretty high percent.
Yeah.
So definitely recommend take advantage of either the free kit. You can buy the kits locally. But yeah, every year the mayor makes a proclamation about Radon Action Awareness or Radon Awareness Month or something like that. And
Nationally, there's
Yeah.
there's national publicity as well.
yep.
Anyway, so that caught my eye, but I think you had a few things you wanted to.
Yeah. So these weren't on the actual agenda, but one is that the Fairfield Police Department. I've noticed this. I've been in the council 9 years, and I've noticed of all our departments, they seem to be hiring more often than others. I was really trying to understand why that is. So the public could see that and think, well, it must not be a good place to work. But there's actually more to it. And I found this article I read online last week, and it talked about this is a national issue. Fewer people are interested in law enforcement as a job. So when job opportunities are posted, much fewer, maybe less than half of the number of applications they used to get, they're not getting them. And just another side note, I've noticed, I've read the same thing with fossil fuel industry is having trouble hiring young people, military. So there's less interest in this younger generation in those professions. So the competition gets more fierce, and law agencies will, the term is, poach from other law agencies. And Fairfield Police Department has been on the receiving end of that, but we don't poach from other departments. We don't approach people who work somewhere else and try to woo them over, though we've had officers who have left for that reason. To add to it, the city employees in Fairfield, when you compare their wages to similar sized cities in Southeast Iowa, have lower wages. Their salaries are lower. Now, I can't speak to why that is. If the city Fairfield decided to do some sort of equalization and raise the salaries to some standard rate, then we'd have to raise property taxes, because that's where most of these, especially law enforcement and public safety, are funded through property tax. That's not what the citizens want. So somebody can be trained and go through the academy with the Fairfield Police Department and be on the job for a couple years, get offered a similar job with the similar requirements, but a higher pay at some area law enforcement agency, and a lot of times that's enticing to them. And so you get this spiral of trouble when you have fewer officers. The ones who are there have to work longer hours, have to cover more, and so then obviously they're not happy. So it's really, and this is not just in Fairfield. This article I read talked about this West Coast, East Coast, all the way in between. So it's just something to consider. So just be really extra nice to the law enforcement agency, just so we have, pat them on the back and give them a high five and tell them they're doing a good job, so that we know they're appreciated and will want to stay with us for a long, long time.
Thanks.
Yep.
That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And the other thing was that we had a snowfall a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
before the snow came, it was rain, and then it was freezing rain, and then it was snow. And our city crews get out and they do their best to clear the streets. They can clear all the city streets in a number of hours in terms of just passing them over once. What happened in this case was a lot of that snow and ice got compacted by cars, and then it stuck to the road. So when the plow went over, instead of lifting it, it just kind of skipped along the top of it. So there were places all over town with these huge patches of ice, and citizens were not happy, and understandably, everyone would prefer the streets were clear. So looked into it a little bit, and one of the reasons is the city doesn't put down salt preemptively, or brine, which is a saltwater mix.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's very damaging to the street. It's not that it's expensive, it's just that it shortens the lifespan of the street. So you have to use it judiciously. You can't just salt whenever. The county and the state do that, and they have a higher budget for clearing the roads than the city does. So people were asking, why are the county roads and the highway clear, the city streets? Well, that's why. They have a higher budget, and they're more willing to use that salt because they can repair roads more easily than the city of Fairfield. I would still like to find out if there's anything, I was talking to city administrators, any way we can help clear the snow even better. For example, our city public works crews who do the plowing can only work so many hours straight by law, and then they have to have time off. Could we pull in city crews from other departments to supplement? You know, this is the kind of stuff that our city administration can look at. Other cities have done that. And then you just have the same equipment, but now it's being used in cyclically. So, you know, one crew comes in, now they get some downtime, get some sleep, get some food, next crew can start. So we're looking into that. It still is actually a kind of a department-wide cooperative effort, because wastewater and waterworks will bring in dump trucks, and that's where the snow that's piled up downtown is loaded into.
Right.
So it's already this kind of citywide effort to clear the streets, but that's kind of the story. And then, you know, again, it's not an excuse; it's just a reason. And if
Well,
we
it's
can
good to know. It helps one to be a little more understanding. I was just noticing today, with all this warm weather, we still have packs.
Yeah. Some of that really, and it, you know, again, it's difficult to compare what happened, the weather happened here to somewhere else, because we had it specific to what we had. It was rain, then it froze, and then snow on top of it, and so.
No, I hand it to our crews. It just kept coming down for 24. More than 12 hours anyway. So.
Yeah, but they do their best, but it doesn't mean that we can't necessarily do better. So we'll keep looking at ways to do better.
I'm realizing you've got some green on. I've got this red and green going on, because we're almost up to Christmas.
That's right.
We got to say, you know, happy Christmas time and happy New Year. Our next city council meeting is when? January. I put you on the spot, but it's almost in the middle.
I think it might be the 13th.
Yeah, it's almost in the middle of the month.
Maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Jason's going to tell us. But.
So it's going to be a new year when we come to you again with that report.
Yep. There's going to be some really good projects going in 2019, and some more interesting stuff to talk about.
Yeah, and if on Christmas
14th,
on
January
the 14th, he just looked it up for us.
So that's our smart guy behind the scenes.
A little city event that, if you're watching this and it's before Christmas, on Christmas Eve, I'm sure this tradition will continue. I haven't tuned into the details, but Santa Claus makes one more tour through Fairfield, and this is a long, long tradition. Winds up at the City Square at the Candy Cane House around between 6 and 6:30. But if you're out and about, and I just wanted to remind everybody, it's just so sweet and really.
Yeah, it's a great tradition.
Yep. Sets the season, and the kids can go to the Candy Cane House with those last requests if they really want to see our representative from the North Pole, and his wife, I believe.
His wife will be there. All right.
I believe so.
All right. Well, this has been fun. I'm glad we're bringing CityBiz back, and I'm looking forward to continuing this in the new year.
Happy Christmas time, coming to you from the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center. See you in the new year.